Mr. Everett, who was one of the chair of the board, Senator White, Mrs. Whitchard or A.B. Whitley. Those were, in my opinion, some of the real strong leaders in the establishment and continuance of this college.
Well, I'm going to say Robert Lee Humber first, because I think that he was so important in developing the whole community college system. I mean, not to offend either of you guys, but Bill Fulford, for everything I read, was extremely important, longtime president, and kind of raised it to a different level. Charlie, you worked with him quite a bit. Beyond those two, you know, I think there's lots of trustees we could name, but Raymond Redrick, I'm a little biased because he was the board chair when I was hired, and I think Mr. Redrick has done a whole lot for not only Pitt, but for the whole community. So I'll kind of leave it at there after that. I think those are the three that really stand out in my mind.
I would say that the four previous presidents to me would be on that mountain. And the reason I say that is because each one took the college from one level, the beginning, the founding president started it off. Then the next president moved it forward. Dr. Russell had a time when he moved it forward when we added different programs and expanded. Dr. Massey was a master builder, so he really put a lot of buildings on this campus and made sure that we were in tune with what industry and businesses need. So I think all four presidents brought it to the point where we are now and deserve to be on the mountain.
Not avoiding the question, but I think my proudest moments have really been at the graduations for all that I participated in. And just to see the fruits of the labor, more or less, the faculty all together with the staff, and great support from the community, the crowds over at the ECU campus, and when we had the ceremony. I remember that from before I even became president. I was at the last one that Dr. Russell performed because I was in the stands. I had been interviewed before that. So yeah, that's a pretty important for 15 years, and then 16 counted the extra one. I went through those. Very impressive.
Well, I'm going to say I have to be proud. A year ago, when we found out about the pandemic, we pulled together and said, now we've got to go to remote learning for most of our classes, and just proud of how our faculty and staff, our leadership team all pulled together to make that happen, and to make it happen very quickly. I did not expect for it to go as well as it did, but it did. Our faculty was well prepared after going through a lot of professional development under Dr. Massey to prepare for giving instruction online and so forth. So they were well prepared, and this pandemic could not have been predicted, but everybody pulled together, made it happen. And also very proud of our students because they did the same thing. They adjusted to it. And so I'm just proud a year later that we were able to conduct it without having major incidents on our campus.
Well, I think, like Dr. Massey said, the graduations were always one of the highlights of every year. To see the success and just the excitement, the enthusiasm that the students showed, and to realize what had happened in their lives was always a great time. Matter of fact, sometimes I even cried out of joy in seeing great things that were happening. Sitting here thinking, I think probably the highlight, or one of the greatest things, was the day they hired me to be president, and I appreciated that very much. But the other thing was being able to be at the groundbreakings for so many of these buildings. Golly, we were always fighting for money for buildings, and it seemed like we never had enough, and I'm sure never will have enough because the college will continue to grow. But one of the highlights always was to be a part of the groundbreaking and then the actual dedication of the facilities, and know that once again we're providing the facilities that were needed in order to give the young folks and older folks opportunity for an education that otherwise they might not have.
You know, if I could just add to that a second, you know, the buildings, you mentioned the buildings, and you know, we certainly had a great record, not with everybody here in terms of adding facilities, but it's always been a challenge. And one entity that we have to recognize are the county people that help support us, because I know it wasn't always easy, but we couldn't have done this without the county support to go with whatever we were able to cobble together from grants from the state. And the county has stepped up. It's not been easy, but they've done it. And we can talk about a lot of individuals that were responsible for that, but it's kind of unique compared to other states where the county is not that big of a factor in the campus development.
Okay, I'm going to go probably back to when I was trying to get into college. I went to college night at high school, and you know, I was unsure of the ability to get into that institution, and so I talked with the recruiter, and that recruiter said to me that you're going to be just fine. Fill out this financial aid form, pack your clothes and get on the bus and come on down to the institution. And of course, to me, that reinforced and said to me that I can do this, and ever since I've not stopped. So it kind of changed my life by encouraging me to go get my degree. And I've wanted to share that with everybody else that I come across, that you can get an education, and that's why I ended up getting into community college role and trying to encourage as many people as possible to improve their lot in life by getting that education. And I think that's one of the great part that changed my life coming out of high school. I was unsure whether I should go to college, and this gentleman really changed everything for me.
Many years ago, before I was with the community college system, I was with the North Carolina Farm Bureau, and they every year had county people involved in developing resolutions. And it seemed to me at one time that most of the resolutions were always against something. So I raised a question with the president of Farm Bureau at that time, and I said to him something to that effect. He said, "Russell, always remember that if you aren't against something, you'll never be for anything." And you have to let that kind of fester in your mind a little bit. But yeah, we were against these things, but at the same time, we were for these things, and these are, of course, the most important things. So that was one of the things that always impressed me, that yes, you couldn't be for everything and really be a person of any magnitude, or to be effective or to be helpful. If you're going to be for everything, then you sooner or later you're going to be out on the street somewhere.
Everybody's got a strong relationship with their parents, right? And yet all of us, I know at one point or another, probably didn't listen a whole lot to what your mother and father said. But I've got to say my mother was most responsible for everything that I pursued after high school anyway, because she pushed me, and she pushed me in ways that were in line with public service and with helping others. She was a nurse, had really, by the seat of her pants, gone through RN training, and became a public health nurse. But you know, that was an inspiration to me, and to keep trying hard to develop myself as much as possible, but also to always look out for others. And certainly community college education is a great way to pursue that.
When I came here, I was the director of adult basic education. I never will forget of going out throughout the county, meeting in facilities, and being a part of their learning to read and write, and just that whole area. And I never will forget one night I went to Farmville for a meeting there, and a lady came up to me and said, had a little piece of brown paper, and she said, "That's my name." It had written. She said, "That's the first time in my lifetime I knew what my name looked like." She said, "When I was a small child," said, "my daddy sent me to the cotton field to pick cotton, and he said, in the spring you can go back to school." She said, "Spring never came." And I guess that probably has had as much profound effect on me as anything I can know of, in terms of you got to do everything you can to make it available to all that can profit and benefit from it. And that was those days with the adult basic ed students, and the efforts they were making to learn to read.
I mean, you talk about students as just a sea of faces and great experiences. And you know, what Dr. Russell said about adult basic education or basic skills students, when I mentioned graduation, I should have said something about the basic skills graduation, because we separated those a while back, and those were always inspiring things. But you know, the one kind of event that comes to mind is go back to facilities. We had challenges mainly having to do with money, and we decided to come up with a bond referendum. Those students that supported us in that campaign were an enormously important group of students who worked on a campaign like that to help us convince the voters. You could say there was self-interest on the part of the students, but they realized that those buildings weren't going to be built until long after they were gone. So it was going for the people that went after them. So that's the thing that stands out in my mind as far as student recollections.
Parents came and they talked to me and said, "Well, my son's going to drop out of school, and we don't want him to do that. We don't want him to drop out. You know, everyone else has completed high school. They've done their best." And so they came to me and said, "Well, if he drops out, can he come to the college?" And I said, "Sure, yeah, we can go through the adult high school GED program, whatever we choose." So he did choose to come and do the adult high school. And while he was in adult high school, he did take one course, and that course was in science, and that really started him to say, maybe I can do this. And he went on from science to an associate degree, and then went on to UNC Wilmington, got his bachelor and master's, and then went on to get his doctorate degree. Wow. So he's one of those students that had not, we said, come on, and our doors are open, we have something for you here. He probably would have been without any sort of education, but now he has a PhD. So, and we always tease him, we say, "You went from a GED to a PhD." And so it's those sort of stories that really make my life complete. I think about at a previous institution where we had a student, again, kind of similar. She did not complete high school, but wanted to be a nurse, and she went through everything and finally became a nurse, and actually decided she would work in the emergency room. And so we did the salary study. She was one of the highest paid nurses just by choosing to finish her education and to get into that field. So those are the sort of stories that keep me going, those success stories of our students, that if we give them an opportunity, they can do it. They can make it happen. We just have to give the encouragement and environment for them to do it. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. 60th year.
So happy anniversary PCC on when I count down from 3, okay?
Happy anniversary
to you. Happy anniversary, PCC.